Hello, this is the Bite Weasel, and in this video we'll be continuing where we left off last episode, earning Robux for our Tycoon game. But now we'll be taking a look at how to use the slightly more complicated Game Passes. So we've seen how to add a button for Robux purchasing a developer product, but what about Game Passes? So let's take a look at that next. So a Game Pass, if you recall, is basically a permanent upgrade, whereas a developer product, which is the one we already have a button for, is more like a consumable that you can buy again and again and again. So if you wanted a Game Pass button, how would you do that? Well, we can duplicate this button, we can move it over here, and this one is going to be a different thing. It's going to be a Game Pass button. So first we need a mechanism for identifying whether the button is going to be purchasing a developer product or going to be purchasing a Game Pass. And I think one of the easiest ways to do that is to just add a new tag and say Game Pass. So if it's a Game Pass button, it will have a Game Pass tag. Otherwise, it won't. Marketplace service has a bunch of ways to prompt the player to buy something. Product purchase is a way of buying developer products, but Game Pass purchase is a way of purchasing a Game Pass. So we basically need to check that tag inside here. So if button.hasTag Game Pass, then we know it's going to be a Game Pass purchase. So we do the exact same thing, but we call a different method. It's going to be prompt Game Pass purchase, right? Just like that. It's still going to get the Roblox ID from the button. And if it doesn't have that tag, so else, going to continue what it was doing before, which is purchasing a developer product. Okay, we need this check also in this script further down, where we sort of grab the information about the product. So if you recall on this call, get product info, there is a different parameter that you pass in. Dot product is how you get it for a developer product, but dot game pass is how you get it for a Game Pass. So we can just do a similar check. In fact, let's just copy this entire if statement. So if the button, which in this function is actually called object for whatever reason, is called Game Pass, then we'll have a local info type there. And if it's Game Pass, we'll say the info type is a info type dot Game Pass. Otherwise, it's going to be an info type dot product, right? So if it's a Game Pass, it's a Game Pass. Otherwise, it's a product. And we can pass that into the function here. And that should work if we had a valid Game Pass ID. So right now, in here, in our Robux button that is the Game Pass, we've still got the developer ID. So how do you make a new Game Pass? Unfortunately, you cannot make a Game Pass through the game settings, at least not so far as I've seen. You can make developer products here by going monetization create, but to actually create a Game Pass, I think you need to go to the Roblox website. So we can do that here. You basically head over to create.roblox.com and you sign in with your account. You go over to creations and you pick the game that you saved to Roblox that you want to create the Game Pass for. So here, Bite Weasel's Tycoon. And then in here, you go down to monetization. And now there is an option for passes. So you can click here and you can create a Game Pass. Now, you won't have any if you're following this from the start, but I've already created a test one to make sure that it works. So you can create a new pass and you can give it an image if you want, and you can give it a nice name. So we're going to say double money forever. That will be the name of our Game Pass, and that's what it will do. It will basically double the money you earn forever. Because if you remember, a Game Pass is permanent. So that will be the name, and you can create a Game Pass. Now, unlike a developer product, when you create a Game Pass, it's not going to be available to buy straight away. Developer products are, you can set their item, you can set their price, and it will just be ready. A Game Pass you have to go into by clicking on it, going down to sales and choosing, yes, this item is for sale, and it's going to cost, however many Robux. So in this case, 100 Robux to buy double money forever. And of course, you can decide what you're selling, what its name is, give it a nice icon, and decide how much it's for. Now, remember, when you sell something in Roblox, you only earn 70% of that amount of Robux. So if I sell it for 100, every time someone buys it, I'm really going to earn 70, and Roblox then earns 30 to keep the servers up and running and stuff. So remember to do that and save your changes. You're now going to have to go back to associated items. And here on the one that you've just created, there's a dot, 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 and you want to copy the asset ID from here. And that should give you the valid Roblox ID that you can sort of paste in here, and that will be your ID. And we can test it by playing the game. And if it worked, we should not see a script error, but we should see that label that we just created for our Game Pass. And there you can see double money forever, 100 Robux. And there's our existing developer product, chunk of money for 10 Robux. Okay, one thing you'll notice is that this label is a bit squished down. And that's because double money forever is a very, very long word. So we'll take this billboard GUI of both this and the other Roblox sort of button, and we'll change its size so that it's much, much wider. So we set it to 10. Now the label should look much better. Okay, and you can sort of take more time when you do it on your game. But there you go. So double money forever, 100, and chunk of money for 10. If I stand on this one now, we're going to get an error. And this is interesting because game passes are different to developer products. When you create a developer product, you can actually just test it in Roblox Studio as much as you want. It doesn't charge you any money for it when you buy it, and you can constantly buy it over and over again. Game passes are different. When you create a game pass, because it's permanent, Roblox gives your character that created the game pass that game pass for free immediately. So now you can see when I've stood on this button, I'm getting an error because I already own this game pass. Roblox sort of gave me that game pass for free. So in my inventory, if I look now, I would have this game pass, even though I didn't actually purchase it. So this is a problem when testing in Roblox Studio because you always already own that game pass. So I can't stand on this and buy it because I already have it. So the way to sort of test it then in Roblox Studio is to remove that game pass from your character's inventory. Now the problem is if you do that, it's a permanent change, which means to ever get that game pass back, you will have to buy it with real Robux. So you can decide if it's worth it or not to you to delete it for testing purposes. For me and this video, I think I'm going to have to show you how to do that. So it will mean that I'll never be able to get that item for free again, but I could always create a new Game Pass and update my code to point to the new Game Pass instead of this one. But for now, I'll show you how to do it. So to delete something from your inventory, we actually have to go to roblox.com. So your actual, Roblox itself rather than create.com, and you have to log in with your account and sort of go down into your inventory. And then in here, you can go down to Game Passes, just passes. And there you shall see the pass that you created and Roblox gave you for free. And if you click on that, you can actually do this ... and you can delete it. And it's going to say, are you sure you want to do this? Because it's permanently deleted. Buy it again, it's going to actually cost me real Robux. So even if I'm testing, it will cost me real Robux to get this item in the real game. But for me, that's okay. We'll say, yes, we've deleted it, and now we no longer own that item, and you can buy it here. So this is another important difference between developer products and game passes. Developer products are in-game only, and you can buy them multiple times. Game passes are permanent, and you can also buy them outside of the game. So you don't actually need to be in the game to be able to purchase a Game Pass. And that's important because what it means is when someone joins your game, they may already have bought that Game Pass outside of the game. So you need an additional check to say, hey, does this guy have this Game Pass or not? So just remember that and we'll come back to it. So there, I've deleted it now. And what that does mean, if I start the game again, all the code will still be running. So when I stand on this button here, it's still looked up. The dump money forever is there. It will now say, okay, you can buy this item because you don't own it. But remember, this is a test purchase. Not only will your account not be charged Robux, but it won't actually give me the item. It only gives me the item temporarily while I'm in this state. If I stop the game, that's it. The item is gone forever because it was only really a fake version of the item. So now the only way to get it for real and permanently is to actually purchase it in a real published game or clicking that buy button on the website for real Robux. So just bear that in mind. When you're testing Game Passes, it's a lot harder than when you're testing developer products. But so we have that now. I have the ability to buy that Game Pass, but the Game Pass works in a different way than the product, than the developer product. So we've already seen here that we need a different mechanism for prompting that purchase if it's a Game Pass versus a developer product. And we need a different mechanism for grabbing the information to update our labels if it's a Game Pass versus if it's a product. And it's very similar when you actually purchase these things. There's a different mechanism for figuring out if the marketplace service has allowed someone to buy the Game Pass or not. So for developer products, it's process receipt. But for Game Passes, it's slightly different. Prompt Game Pass purchase finished. And this is different because here, process receipt is sort of a function that you override, whereas this is just a regular event. I don't know why it's different, but it certainly is. So in this one, you hook up to listen to that event. You get the player, which is, of course, a player, the Game Pass ID. So I'll just call it Pass ID, which is a number, and then an important was purchased, which is going to be true or false. And that is what you get back from this callback. In the developer product, it was just a single object that you then looked up stuff on. Here, it's individual pieces. And what you have to do is sort of add some guard checks to make sure that when they bought it, it was valid. The same way that we sort of checked up here. So we can do this similar thing. So we can first say if there's not a player, then we're just going to return early. Okay? Now, the prompt Game Pass purchase thing is different in that you don't have to return a particular value when you quit. You can just exit early without actually passing anything out to the caller because it's an event. So the event doesn't actually listen to the return value. So we can just quit early like we would in a normal function. Okay. So if there's not the player, don't do anything. Very similar to if it wasn't purchased, then don't do anything. So if they canceled out or they already had the Game Pass, then we don't want to do anything magical. Otherwise, what we want to do is this exact same code here, really. We want to check that our storage has that pass ID. In fact, let's just name that to ID. So our storage here is not going to be products, but it's going to be passes because they're going to be slightly different. Could not find the Game Pass ID, blah, in the passes table. Did we forget to add it? Probably. If we ever see that warning, we forgot to add it. So if it's not in there, then return early. Otherwise, call that function and we'll pass in the ID. And if it didn't work, then quit. Otherwise, we did successfully buy something. But because we don't need to return anything from an event, we don't really need any code here. But we can say correctly bought the Game Pass. And then for each Game Pass, of course, we're going to need a function that actually does whatever the Game Pass is supposed to do. So up here, much like we had a developer product sort of table, we can have a similar thing for our passes, Game Passes table. And this one is going to be control double money forever. Okay, and it's going to get that, and it's going to get the ID, which I guess we can say is a number. But we're not going to do this, and this ID is incorrect. So let's copy the ID from here. This is our Game Pass ID, not to be confused with the product ID for the other one. So if they buy this Game Pass, what do we want to do? Well, double money forever sort of suggests to me that we need to store some variable somewhere that says, hey, whenever they sell something, give them double money. So how do we store something in our game? Well, we already have a mechanism for storing things in our game. It's this data script, which underneath calls the profile store library that we added and can save and restore values from our profile. And this is going to be great. We're going to use this to add a new item to say whether or not they have unlocked double money Game Pass, right? And we're going to start with a value of false because no one has that unless they've bought it. So now we need to get access to this profile store so that we can update this value. And then we're going to change the seller script so that if this value is true, when they sell something, it's worth twice as much. Okay, that should make sense. So how do we get access to this script? Well, we require it. And we require it the same way that some existing scripts require it. So inside our Roblox purchases, we can require the data, and we can say local profile equals data.get for this player, right? And if there's not a profile for some bizarre reason, then we will return false and say it didn't work. Otherwise, we will say profile dot double money Game Pass equals true, and we will return true. So now, if they buy this Game Pass down here, as long as they're a real player, they did purchase something, and the ID is correct to look up into our function table over there, then we're going to buy it. And if that succeeds, then we're all good. And it will succeed as long as we can find the profile, and then we set the double money Game Pass to be true. Neat. Now we do something very similar in the sellers. So we'll grab this data, we'll head on over to our seller script, paste that in so that we require the data information. And then down here where we sell the product, we can do this. We can have a local variable called worth to be the usual price of that item that we're selling. And we'll increase the money by the worth. Then we'll just say, okay, we'll grab the profile by going data.get for the player, right, who's selling the item. And if profile and profile dot double money Game Pass, then worth equals worth times 2. So now if they have the double money Game Pass, everything they sell will be worth twice as much. And how do they get the Game Pass? Well, they purchase it in game right now, which will call our prompt Game Pass purchase finished event, which will do that checking in. And as long as it succeeds, we should set that to be true. And because it's going to be stored in our profile, it means that it's going to be saved forever, just like a Game Pass. Okay? It does mean if they delete the Game Pass, though, their profile will still be set to true. So they will have it forever, even if they delete it. But I think that's okay. And if it's not okay, you could certainly check to see if they have it when they join the game. And if they do not have it, update their profile. And I can show you how to do that. But would you like to buy it? Yes, I would. Cool, it succeeded. Remember, this only test succeeded for this instance of the game. But now what we should see is over here, the money is going up twice as much. And I think it is, right? It's hard to see because so much drops at once. But if it's 100 and then all of a sudden it's, 1,300, which is way more. So it is working. Now remember though, game passes can be bought outside the game. Right now, our code only handles if they have the bought the product in the game. Sorry, bought the Game Pass in the game. What happens if they bought it outside the game and then joined? We need a mechanism to basically run through this exact same code, but when the player joins the game. So what we could do is grab the player service and add a player adding event when they join the game, and then look up what game passes they have and do that. And we could do that. But we need to make sure that we also have access to their profile at that point. And if you recall, getting the profile information, which we do inside the factory here when someone joins the game, is kind of a pain, right? Data.playerAdded gets called, which ends up doing a whole bunch of nonsense to figure out whether or not the profile is there. So we really don't want to add our own copy of this because we can't call this more than once without it breaking everything. So how then do we know if a player has joined the game? Well, the factory knows if a player has joined the game, and the factory tells the profile service, hey, a player was added. Could it also tell the purchases script that a player was added? Well, not the same way that we do it currently, because the data script is a module service. So you can communicate between them directly by just calling functions after you've required the module script. Calling between two regular scripts is more difficult, but I'll show you a mechanism that we can do that with. One of the things that we could do, of course, is sort of lift this up into a module script and sort of have that shared between the two. And we could do that, but I'm going to show you a different technique so that you can decide which one works best for your game, and maybe not even your Tycoon game, but future games that you create. So another way to do this is to add something into our server script storage, which is called a bindable event. Now, a bindable event is basically an event much like any of the other built-in Roblox events, but it's a custom one for you, and only you control who fires it, and only you control who listens to it. So much like the marketplace service prompt Game Pass purchase finished is an event, this will now be event. And so we can call it Game Pass Check. That's going to be the name of our event. And in here, we can grab access to that. We can say game get service, and then the server script service. And we can say dot game pass check. We can say dot event, and we can connect up to that. And it's going to take in the player that was just added to the game, and we want to check the game passes for. Okay? And that's pretty straightforward. We've got that game pass now. So something's going to fire this event, and we will be listening to it. And then when that happens, we can check to see if the player has any game passes that we know about. And if they do, we should run the code that sort of stores that information into our profile. So how can we do that? Well, all we need to do is loop through those IDs, right, in our passes table. Right, so that's going to loop through every single pass ID that we know about. So this one, and then if we added more, the next one, and so on and so on. And for each one of these, we basically want to say, hey, do they have this game pass? And if they do, run the function, otherwise just ignore it. So what we want to do is for each one of those things, we basically want to say, check if the player owns the game pass, and if so, call the passes ID function. Okay, I think that makes sense. Let's see if Roblox can help us out. owns Game Pass. There's a thing here called user owns Game Pass, and you can pass in the user ID and the ID of the Game Pass. And that's going to tell us if they own the Game Pass. And if they do, we're basically just going to call that function, right? Which will act as if they just bought the Game Pass, same as this code. So we're going to loop through all of the known Game Passes we have. And if they already own it, then it's going to call this. Unfortunately, we won't really be able to test this because I already deleted the Game Pass from my account, which means when I join, I won't have it. Okay? But that's okay because we can call this as an event in some other way. So right now, nothing calls this event. So let's figure out where we should add that. Well, inside the factories, after a player has been added and after we've got the profile for them, we can basically fire this event. So you grab the event by going game, get service, server script service, Game Pass check, and then on there is a fire function. And you can pass in whatever parameters are expected by the handler. So in our case, the player. So now when a player joins, we're going to set up the profile service just like we would normally. And then we're going to say, hey, do a Game Pass check to see if they have anything, right? And that should work. Except there's going to be a problem. And that problem we already mentioned is that because we expect Game Passes to be a permanent purchase, we've stored whether or not they have the double money forever inside our profile. When I join the game, though, I don't actually have that Game Pass because if you recall, I deleted it from my inventory, and so now when I join the game, I won't have it, but I can buy it in testing mode. So even though I don't actually have the Game Pass, you'll see that I'm getting double money. And that can be fine, right? The likelihood of someone actually deleting a Game Pass is very, very slim. I bet you didn't even know you could do it. But if you're really concerned about it, what we can do is we can use this Game Pass check to not only say, hey, if they have it, buy it, but we can also say, if they don't have it, reset the profile back to say false. Now, I wouldn't really do this in my game because I don't really mind if someone buys it, they should just have it forever, even if they delete it. But in your game, maybe you want to. So basically what we can say is instead of doing that check, we'll grab if the owner has the Game Pass, and then we'll just pass that value in. So we're always going to call this function now. Not only if they have the Game Pass, but we're going to call it if they don't have the Game Pass too. And up here, inside our passes, which are different to developer products, we're going to have that variable, has pass. And so instead of just setting it to true, we're going to set it to if they have the pass or not, right? So now if we call this function, but they don't have the Game Pass because they deleted it, like I've done in this example, then that profile is going to be set back to false. When you actually purchase the Game Pass in the game, we're going to know that that actually worked, so we can always pass in true here. True, they just bought the Game Pass, and then when they join, we're going to look up to see if they accidentally deleted that Game Pass or not, and if they did, we'll update it. Now, normally I wouldn't bother doing this, but for testing, it's kind of important because I'd already saved it into my profile. Now I've sort of run that Game Pass check. It's noticed that I no longer have that Game Pass, and so I should not be getting double money, and I'm not. But if I go over here and buy it and say, yes, I would like to buy it, now the other script has run where I bought it in game, it saved it to the profile service, and this is just working because we look up from the profile service as we sell. So that's nice. So you can decide yourself if you want to sort of allow people to delete Game Passes from their inventory, and if they do, remove their bonus, or you can just have it saved in the profile store forever. But this is how you would do it if you wanted to remove it afterwards. You would pass that in as true or false. So that's fine. And that is how they can buy Game Passes as well as developer products last time. So in theory, you can now start earning Robux. Now, one caveat I do want to make sure that you're aware of is while testing Game Passes, you may hit this issue. Third-party item sales have been disabled for this place. Your account has not been charged. Error. Even though I haven't changed any of the Game Pass IDs, I haven't changed anything to do with the code. Sometimes when you start it, it says it's a third-party item sale, even though we know that it is not because it's the same item that I created and it was working last time. If you do hit this issue, the easiest way to just sort of solve it is to go over to your game settings when you're no longer playing the game. So stop the game, go over to your game settings, go to security, and turn on allow third party sales. And really, you should only do this while testing. So it definitely says here enable security bypass may make your experience vulnerable to third party attacks. So you do not want to allow this when you publish your game unless you know what you're doing. But for testing, this is okay. And it will sort of get rid of that issue where sometimes Roblox thinks that you don't own the Game Pass while you're testing, even though it is the Game Pass that we just created. So if you do hit that issue, that's how to solve it. But make sure you turn that off before you publish your game. So there we go. So now we have code that not only allows us to buy stuff in our Tycoon, but we can buy a chunk of money over and over again with our developer product button, and we can buy a double money forever Game Pass inside the game using this, and outside the game using the inventory. And the same code should work either way, because when a player joins the game, we do a Game Pass check that updates it, and when they buy it in the game, we run the same code here. So there you go. So one last thing that I want to mention is that if you look up the documentation for Marketplace Service, in all of the examples, you'll see that whenever they call user owns Game Pass async, they actually wrap this call in a new function call. And the function that they use is this thing built into Lua, which is called pcall, and it stands for protected call. And the way that it works is you sort of pass in the function that you want to protect. In our case, it is going to be, the thing that we're calling marketplace service. But the way that it works is that anything run with inside this pcall, sort of callback, is protected against script errors. So if any of this sort of script in here throws an error, like for example, the marketplace service is down and you can't connect to Roblox, instead of it destroying the rest of your script and sort of skipping over the rest of this for loop and just like exiting out of the whole thing, when it's wrapped in a pcall, that script error does not exit outside of this function. Instead, you get given a different value from the answer of this pcall invocation. And that is, instead of the actual variable that you're returning here, you actually get given a success value and a message value. And then inside here, you end up having to set an outer thing to the value that you're actually trying to get. So here we will have a local owns Game Pass, and we'll set it to false to begin with. Then we'll do a protected call that makes sure if this thing fails, the script error is not going to leak outside and destroy the rest of our script. Instead, we should just make sure that the call actually worked. And if it didn't work, then we're going to return early, which inside this for loop means we want to continue. Right? So this protected call means that if Roblox does not manage to make this call for some reason, like the server is down on their side, then the error will get thrown. Pcall will then return success as false, which means the value of owns Game Pass, we don't know. It could be right, it could be wrong, depending on where it failed. So if success of the pcall is false, it doesn't work, then we'll just ignore it. They'll stay with whatever value they currently have set in their profile service. So there you go. I just wanted to mention that protected calls are useful. You'll see them in the documentation, and it basically protects whatever's inside that call from throwing a script error out into the rest of your code. So that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, like and subscribe, leave a comment, ring that notification bell, all that good stuff, and I will see you next time.